Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles and I'm a life coach and a consulting hypnotist. And every Saturday afternoon at 2:30, I shoot a short 5-10 minute video on some aspect of coaching or the arts and sciences of hypnosis. Today I want to talk about a piece of gear, a piece of equipment that hypnotists have used for many, many, many years. The Chevreul Pendulum, sometimes called the sidereal pendulum. Now, the classic image I think people have of hypnotist is someone waving a pocket watch in front of someone's eyes or spinning it around to cause the eyes to lock on it. And that is one of the things that hypnotists will do with a pendulum, which is just a string with a weight on the end of it. They did work as a transinduction device. You see, if you cause eye strain, the optic nerves send signals to the core of the brain where the hippocampus is located that are very similar to what they send when you're asleep and dreaming, something called rapid eye movement sleep. So we know that eye strain, which you can cause very easily by swinging a pendulum in front of someone's eyes, will in fact trick the brain into moving into an altered state. Because as far as the primitive parts of the brain knows, whenever it gets those signals from the optic nerve, that means you're dreaming. By counterfeiting them, we trick you into moving into an altered state. So one of the uses of the pendulum has been the swinging pendulum to cause eye fixation and generate eye strain. However, the pendulum is itself very popular among hypnotists. Now, for those of you who are following me on Patreon, who are my patrons, when I shoot the second part of this video, I'm actually going to give you a tour of my personal pendulum collection. I've been collecting them for decades, and I have some really interesting ones. But for this video, which will be on Facebook and YouTube, I just want to show you one of the kind of neat pendulums that I have. Now, hold it up to the camera. This is actually the pendulum, and it's in a little bronze holder in the shape of a coiled dragon. The pendulum and the holder were made for me by an artist by the name of Scott Macklin, and he does gorgeous goldsmithing and silversmithing work. The pendulum itself is a piece of crystal, and what's embraced in a silver and gold overlay of a castle. And I'm a big fan of the Chronicles of Narnia. Probably most of you know the first book in the Chronicles, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. And this was intended to be Claire-Parival, the castle in Narnia, where the kings and queens would live. The chain is solid 14 karat gold and has a little 14 karat gold rabbit at the end of it to give us something to hold on to. That is a gift from Lindsay many years ago. We called it Grace Abounding, just kind of an interesting pun. Now, people like the pendulum because it proves the power of an idea to inspire action. If you just look at the pendulum, making no attempt to move it, you will find that it's very often the case that if you suggest it's going to move from side to side, or if you suggest it's going to move front to back, without any conscious effort, it will do that. The idea is sufficient to cause change in the body. And if you think about it, that's what hypnotism is all about. We present ideas in the form of suggestion to our clients, and we cause change in their mind, but also in their body. Hypnotists have often used the Chevreul pendulum as a suggestibility test to see how hard you're going to have to work to get the client to absorb suggestions from the environment, or even as a crude lie detector. Some practitioners will have the client hold it and ask, was the trauma that you experienced between the ages of 1 and 3, between 3 and 5, between 5 and 10, and so on, and play 20 questions with the pendulum swinging forward and back for yes, or side to side for no, or in some other pattern that's prearranged. So it is useful to probe the unconscious process, to see how suggestible the client is, to demonstrate the core idea of hypnosis, that ideas can inspire action. And also, if you want to hypnotize someone with an eye fixation device, you've got it right there too. Now, we call this the Chevreul pendulum because it was described by Michael Eugene Chevreul, a French chemist who lived from 1786 to 1889. And if you do the math, he lived to be 102 years old. He was a good scientist, did a lot of work in gerontology, studying the effects of aging. He's in fact one of the 72, his name is one of the 72 names that was inscribed at the top of the Eiffel Tower to honor his memory. What he described is that the reason the pendulum worked, and they've been around before, spiritualist mediums were using them and so on. In fact, Martin Luther actually in 1518 decried that the use of a pendulum or dowsing or anything like that was a sin, violation of the first commandment. So they've been used for a long time, but Chevreul saw that they worked and he wanted to figure out why. And when he did, what he determined is that we have layers of smooth muscles under the skin of our fingers. All muscles in the human body are smooth or striate. Striate muscles are your major flexors. Smooth muscles, though, are controlled by your autonomic nervous system, which is wired into your subconscious or unconscious process. So microflexations in the smooth muscles of the fingertips cause the swing or period of the pendulum to alter. And that's how Chevreul proved that this is what was happening when the idea inspired the pendulum to move. Now, by the way, that's called ideomotor movements. A lot of research on them. I have an article here from PubMed, Information Processing Analysis of the Chevreul Pendulum Illusion. And this was published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology and Human Perception in 1975. And they actually used slow motion photographs and motion detectors to see what was happening, that the hand wasn't moving, but the pendulum was. And that's the microflexations of the smooth muscles. Now, some people will go farther than using the pendulum as an induction device or as a suggestibility test or to kind of figure out what's going on in a person's subconscious mind. Some people actually embrace it as a lifestyle. Now, that's not part of hypnotism as such, but a lot of people do it. I've never gone to a hypnosis convention where I haven't seen pendulums being offered for sale in the exhibit hall. Some people will actually use this to go over their medicines to see what vitamins they should take that day. I know one person will go over a book table to discover what books their unconscious mind thinks they should read, and then go down the table of contents to see what part of the book they should read. Certainly save some time, but I'm not quite sure how that would work. But people who do that kind of dowsing, as it's called, actually make almost a faith statement about the use of the pendulum. Now, they're not only confined to the hypnosis world. There are actually companies making, or I think the company I'm going to mention has actually been closed down and its director's gone to jail, but a company called Advanced Tactical Security and Communications Limited, it was a British company, was marketing something called the ADE 651. And this was basically a rod that worked like a pendulum in a plastic holder. And they were marketing that this device could, from a long range, effectively and accurately test for various kinds of explosives. The device was sold in 20 countries, especially in the Middle East and Asia. And in fact, Iraq and Afghanistan purchased it heavily to deal with improvised explosive devices. And these things were sold for $60,000 each. And it's estimated the Iraqi government has actually spent something like $67 million US on these devices. And all they are is glorified pendulums. There's no electronics going on in there. It's just purely ideomotor movements of the person holding it. So the Chevreul pendulum is a useful thing as well as really quite pretty. Definitely illustrates the power of an idea to cause action, which is the core principle of hypnotism. It ratifies hypnotism for people who are skeptical. They sit there surprised that the pendulum is moving when they're not moving their hand. Definitely a suggestibility test. And maybe, in fact, a person's intuition and their subconscious mind does communicate in this way. I can be skeptical, but sometimes I also believe it's true. And I've had some interesting experiences with that. I'll talk more about that on Patreon. Apart from that, dousing over book tables and stuff, well, that's not my thing. And that's more, I think, a spiritual belief. But I have no problem for someone who wants to do it. So it's a fascinating little gadget. If you don't have one, make one and play with it. You'll be amazed at what you can determine using the pendulum and the power of your unconscious mind. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week, same time, and I'll be talking at that point about the connection between hypnotism and the martial arts. I happen to be a multiple black belt. I think you'll find that of interest. Tune in if you'd like. And as always, if I can be helpful to you, please feel free to reach out through my website, telephone, messenger, whatever. When I edit this for my YouTube channel, we'll have the Patreon URL and my website URL will appear. So thank you much. Do well. Stay well. Bye-bye.